There have been trade rumors out there involving Islanders goalie Ilya Sorokin. We'll separate fact from fiction and talk about what's going to happen. All that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today and talk a little Islanders hockey. Always great to do that. And we have got a lot to break down and talk about on today's show. Some trade rumors out there involving goalie Ilya Sorokin. We'll try to parse that down and figure out what it all means. Plus, something that hasn't happened in quite some time, Islanders prospects invited to a showcase and an honor, and we'll talk about that. Plus, we'll continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders draft picks with Burke Hood, the goalie. All that and more coming up on today's show. I got to start with the Ilya Sorokin rumors. I have heard that the Edmonton Oilers may be interested in acquiring Ilya Sorokin. And I have heard that maybe Sorokin was, that other teams inquired about Ilya Sorokin at the draft at some point. And quite honestly, I do not think that this is something that is in any way imminent. And here's why. Ilya Sorokin is the difference maker on this Islanders team. As much as he has been overworked at times and hasn't had his A game all the time in the last 2 seasons, without Ilya Sorokin, right now, the Islanders are by far a lottery team. To go into the season with your top 3 goalies being 37-year-old Semyon Varlamov, who is coming off a season-ending injury that limited him to 10 games last year, to then have the backup be a competition between Hogberg and Rittich, that would put the Islanders somewhere in the mid to high 20s if you're ranking goaltenders in this league. And you also have to keep in mind that Matthew Darche and ownership at different times have said that their goal is to keep the New York Islanders competitive while turning over this roster and digging out of the mess that Lou Lamoriello left for this team. Well, Ilya Sorokin, by far, is the New York Islanders' best player. You're looking at a guy who has a cap hit of essentially $8.25 million and is under contract until the end of the 2031-2032 season. He also has a full no trade clause, no movement clause. He cannot be waived, sent to the minors, or traded without approving it. And, oh yeah, he's in his prime right now at the age of 29. As far as the Oilers rumors are concerned, in addition to that no trade clause and the fact that the Islanders would not be even close to competitive if they didn't have Sorokin in goal right now, the other factor is the Oilers wouldn't be able to afford him under the salary cap. There were rumors going around that different teams, in particular Utah, the Mammoth, may have inquired when the Islanders were trying to move up and get a pick in the top 7 or 8 to get James Higgins, to draft him, the Long Island native. And you heard Matthew Darche say, yeah, we tried to move up. We had discussions, but nothing came of it. And if they brought up Ilya Sorokin as somebody they wanted, if you want the 5th pick or the 6th pick, we'll do it, but you got to throw in Ilya Sorokin. I don't think it's any great mystery as to why no trade was worked out for that pick that would have been, James Higgins. So the Islanders have always had a philosophy under Lou Lamoriello, under Garth Snow, Bill Torrey, and I think Matthew Darche. If you look at what happened in Tampa Bay as well, you start with a goalie. Whether it's Rick DiPietro back in the day under Milbury, whether it is right now Ilya Sorokin, Billy Smith way back in the day, who the Islanders were fortunate enough to get in the expansion draft back in 1972. You look at Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay. You start with that goalie. You're not going to be a team that is a consistent cup contender without having at least really good goaltending. It doesn't necessarily have to be elite, but it's got to at least be really good. And one of the big differences, if you go to the last 2 Stanley Cup finals, you could talk about, the Panthers were more physical. They wore the Oilers down. Well, last year that wasn't true. In fact, the Panthers were up 3-0 in the series, and the Oilers managed to tie it and force a 7th game. So they weren't worn down necessarily in 2024. The big difference between the Panthers and the Oilers in the last 2 Stanley Cup finals was goaltending. Sergei Bobrovsky over Stuart Skinner, big gap there as far as rankings and goaltending. With Ilya Sorokin right now, the Islanders have a goalie who is one of the top 10 goalies in the league when he's healthy and when he's not overused. And imagine if he had a more defensively sound team in front of him. We've seen what he's capable of doing. So here's the bottom line. If ownership and Matthew Darche were serious when they said, yeah, we want to remain competitive while we retool this roster. We are not going for a rebuild. We are going for a retool. If they were serious about that, then you're not trading Ilya Sorokin. Because if you trade Ilya Sorokin, you're in a full rebuild. And I know there are some fans who want to, tank for McKenna, right? You trade Ilya Sorokin, that's essentially what you're doing. You are tanking. You're giving up unofficially on being competitive this year. And you're saying, hey, it may take 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, but we're going to rebuild. And let's face it, if you were to trade Sorokin now, Matthew Barzal, Bo Horvat, they're 30, 29, 30. They're not going to be in their primes anymore by the time this team rebuilds. Retool 2 years, 3 years, they could still be really good players. Rebuild 5, 6, 7 years, they're slowing down big time. And maybe you then have to think about moving on from them in order to accelerate that retool. So I don't put very much stock in these rumors. I am confident that there were teams that asked, hey, we want Sorokin. Can we work out a deal? Whether that was Utah, whether that was Boston, whether Edmonton inquired. But I don't see a lot of fire behind this smoke, because moving Ilya Sorokin from this team right now changes the entire equation from a retool to a full-blown rebuild. And you might as well just, knock the whole thing down and build it back up from square one. That's where it is as of right now. These rumors are out there. We know this is kind of the slow part of the NHL year, the calendar. People need things to talk about. People need things to write about. But I do not put a lot of stock into these rumors. I think people are asking, but I don't think the Islanders are interested. Hey, if the Oilers say, hey, we'll give you Connor McDavid and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in exchange for Ilya Sorokin, yeah, I do that. But they're not going to do that. They're not going to make that offer. And the Islanders are just not really looking to move on from Sorokin unless they are trying to do something completely different from what they said they're trying to do. All right, we have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We'll talk a little bit about some of the Islanders' prospects. They were invited to a very special showcase, 4 of them, as a matter of fact. We'll also talk a little bit about some signings at the AHL level, and we will have our scouting report on goaltender Burke Hood, who was the 6th-round pick of the Islanders this year. We'll break down his strengths and weaknesses and what impact he could have on the team going forward. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I love the convenience, being able to look on one app and see everything that I need to see regarding my finances. And if you share finances with someone, well, Monarch really helps the two of you stay on the same page. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. So the Islanders had 4 prospects who were invited to Team USA's World Junior Showcase. And it's going to be held the end of this month, July 25th through August 2nd in Minneapolis at the Ritter Arena. 42 players are invited, and 4 of the 42, a little less than 10%, are prospects for the New York Islanders. And the World Junior Showcase, this is sort of the first step in getting invited to play at the World Junior Championships. So the 4 players are Jacob Kavajnika, who we profiled on Tuesday in our show, Sam Larilla, Camille Bednarik, and Cole Yzerman. No surprise there. Bednarik, 2nd-round pick in 2024, a center. and played at BU last year, along with Yzerman, who we know had 25 goals in 39 games. Kvasnica, 7th-round pick of the Islanders this year from Minnesota, going to the University of Minnesota. And Larilla, a 5th-round pick this year of the Islanders, who we will be profiling very soon. He is a defenseman, had 8 goals, 33 assists in 57 games with the Fargo Force of the USHL. So here we go with a big change for the New York Islanders, where a year ago, maybe 1, maybe 2 prospects might get invited. 2-3 years ago, you're lucky if the Islanders had 1. And again, it's just a sign of progress for this organization that is desperately needed. And again, it's a process. It will take time for all this to happen, but we are seeing indications that the Islanders prospect pool is improving, and hopefully, if what Matthew Darche has said about developing talent is true, you're not just drafting these guys, but you send them to Bridgeport and they actually get prepared to play in the NHL. Draft and develop is still the way to build an NHL team. You then get the last pieces of the puzzle, usually with a trade or a free agent signing or 2. But the draft is the skeleton, the foundation of a long-term successful team. And it is great to see these players being invited to the Team USA showcase. One other note, by the way, on a former Islanders prospect, William Dufour, who was traded to the Colorado Avalanche. He is signing with a team, HC Lada, in the KHL for the 2025-2026 season. So the former 5th-round pick played for Bridgeport for 3 years, played in 1 NHL game for the Islanders. I think he was on the ice for 5 minutes, give or take. But did not develop in the Islanders system, was part of the Brock Nelson deal, but not staying on with the Avalanche organization for better or for worse. That is, the bottom line. And again, what you need to see now is a contrast between draft, not drafting early, trading away all your 1st-round picks, and then not developing the players you do draft successfully, versus draft and develop. And think about this. This year, under Matthew Darche, the Islanders had more 1st-round picks, 3, than they had in the last 6 years under Lou Lamoriello. They had 2. That doesn't guarantee results. I'm not saying, okay, it's all settled. We've got these 3 first-round picks. They're all going to the Hockey Hall of Fame. But, you need the raw material, right? And when you contrast William Dufour, for example, and this is not meant to knock William Dufour, but William Dufour made his mark as an overaged junior. That was his big scoring season. And overaged juniors, it's not always easy to replicate that success. So you got a 5th-round pick whose stock went up for 2 reasons. Number one, he was very successful as an overaged junior. And then number 2, that the Islanders prospect pool was pretty sparse, so that all of a sudden he was one of your top 3 or 4 prospects, where a year ago, whereas now, if he were still in the Islanders system, would he crack the top 10? And again, not a knock on William Dufour. I like the kid. I hope he does very well in the KHL. Maybe he can succeed there, come back and play in the NHL someday. But the fact that the Avalanche did not re-sign him and that the Islanders were very much willing to part ways with him in the Brock Nelson deal, I think it just sort of speaks volumes about the difference between where we were with this organization and the prospect pool and where we are. So the arrow is pointing up. It will take time, usually, 2, 3, 4 years in between the time you draft a player and they, 2 or 3 years till they get to the NHL, with a few rare exceptions. We'll see if Matthew Schaefer becomes one of those. And then another year or two until they get up to speed and start to make a big impact. So the players you draft in 2025, 2028, 2029, 2030, that's when they start having a big, big impact. Maybe Matthew Schaefer does have an impact before then, but we'll see. We'll see. It's a process. All right, more to get to on today's show. We'll talk about the scouting report of Islanders goalie Burke Hood, their 6th-round pick in this year's draft. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, one of the most popular players on the team in the 70s, who is way overdue to be in the Islanders Hall of Fame. We'll talk about that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So we continue our player-by-player look at the New York Islanders draft picks. Burke Hood was the Islanders' 6th-round pick, and he played for the Vancouver Giants in the Western League in juniors. He's a big goalie, 6'3", only 197 pounds. So again, at 18 years old, just turned 18 in April, it'll take him time to, build up a little bulk, a little size. He had a solid season last year. 3 shutouts, a 19-13-6 record, a .910 save percentage, and a .313 goals against average, which in the Western League, which tends to be a little more open, high scoring, that's not bad. He did not have a good playoff, played in 5 games, was 1-3 with an .863 save percentage and a .640 goals against average. So didn't come through big in the playoffs, but you're adding a goalie with size and athleticism. And he's got really good vision, sees through screens and redirection attempts. The key with him is twofold. Number one, the rebound control needs a little work. And again, he's 18 years old. Goalies take longer to develop than almost any other position. So he's got time. And the good news is that he got better as the season went on, but it's rebound control and maybe focusing on his angles a little bit more. He has great reflexes, but he relies on those reflexes a little bit more than maybe he should. Now, he took over mid-season as the undisputed starter in Vancouver last year. They traded Matthew Hutchison, and I think that made him more confident overall once he was the guy. And here is a guy who you add this goalie to the pipeline. And the Islanders, they have Dmitry Gomzin, they have Marcus Gidloff, Tristan Lennox. They've got some goalies who are in the pipeline, definitely all of them years away, and we don't know if any of them even will make the Islanders and play in the NHL. But again, in the 6th round, realistically speaking, anybody you take, if they play in the NHL, or even if they become really good AHL players, you're ahead of the game. So I'm interested in seeing what Burke Hood can do, and we will keep an eye on him and every other Islanders draft pick. over the course of the coming season, and it's exciting. It is going to be so great to talk about prospects this year because we have a whole bunch of them that we want to keep an eye on. All right, it is time for our Islanders birthday of the day. Happy 77th birthday to former Islanders goalie Chico Resch, the Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan native, only 5'9", 165 pounds. He was small for a goalie even back then. But Glenn Chico Resch joining the Islanders for 2 games in 73-74. But by 74-75, he and Billy Smith were kind of alternating. And it was Chico Resch who was instrumental in that long playoff run that the Islanders went on in 1975, coming back from a 3-0 deficit to beat Pittsburgh, coming back from a 3-0 deficit to force a 7th game against the defending Stanley Cup champion Flyers. And Chico, he was maybe the first media star that the Islanders had. He was always happy to talk to the press after games. He was quotable, he was engaging, and I've had the fortunate opportunity to meet Chico Resch a number of times in the press box at the Coliseum, and when he was, whenever he came back, and he was just always great to talk to. I could talk hockey with a guy like Chico Resch all day long. And Chico Resch, who hasn't played for the Islanders since the 80-81 season, he was on the Islanders' first Stanley Cup winning team in 1980. In 80-81, he was there until the trade deadline, got dealt to the Colorado Rockies, who became the Devils, finished his career with the Flyers. But even all these years later, with 25 shutouts, Chico Resch is the Islanders' all-time shutout leader. Now, that could change. Ilya Sorokin may, be pressuring him in a short amount of time. But Chico Resch, such a great player. The Islanders' growth from an expansion team to a cup winner doesn't happen without the contributions of Chico Resch. And he belongs in the New York Islanders Hall of Fame. I know now, since he finished his career in Philly, but he played many years for the Devils organization, worked and works as a broadcaster for New Jersey. He is, in some people's minds, associated with the Devils. But I'm telling you, what a great Islander he was and how much he meant to this organization. He belongs in the Islanders Hall of Fame. It is an honor that is long overdue, and I would like to see it happen while the Islanders play the Devils multiple times. If Chico is still working for the Devils, and even if he's not, bring him in, honor him the way he deserves to be honored. We go back and look at one of Chico Resch's better games as an Islander, April 24th, 1975, Islanders, Penguins at the Nassau Coliseum, Game 6 of their best-of-7 quarterfinal series. Islanders had won the last 2 games after falling behind 3-0. Again, a must-win game at the Nassau Coliseum. And in this game, the Islanders outshoot Pittsburgh 40-32, but 31 saves by Chico Resch, 2 goals by Gary Howitt, who you don't think of as a big goal scorer, but Resch with a .969 save percentage. Pierre LaRouche had the only goal in this game. It came early in the second period, and after that, Chico shut the door, forced a Game 7 with this win at the old barn, and then he shut out the Penguins 1-0 in Game 7 to pull off what was then only the second reverse sweep in NHL history. The first one happened in 1942. So Chico Resch, an underappreciated Islander who belongs in the Islander Hall of Fame and one of the nicest guys you're ever going to want to meet. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no off season. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email. We've got a couple in the pike. I'll either discuss them tomorrow or Monday. But keep sending in those emails and questions, and I will get to all of them. Don't worry. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long. It's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we are back tomorrow. We'll continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders draft picks. Plus, what should the Islanders do with Pierre Engvall? It's an interesting question. I will break that down and discuss that on the show. So make sure you join us for that. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.